Hey guys, today we're going to be working with graphing radicals. Radicals are really easy to graph as long as you have a basic understanding of what perfect radicals are. So if you don't, look up perfect roots and try and get some basic understanding before we try graphing. But if you can make an XY chart, I promise you can graph a radical function. In this example, we're going to look at graphing radical expressions. Now, this slide may look a little overwhelming, but let me explain what each thing does. Your A value right here, that's your stretch or compress. So that just is going to be how fat or skinny your graph is. This H value, that determines if it moves left or right. And then your K value is your up and down. So if you feel like this slide would be useful to you, maybe pause, take a photo of it, have it available for you as you're graphing radical expressions. The next thing we need to recognize is that even and odd radicals have different graphs. An even graph has a very distinctive starting point. So it has a starting point and then it gets bigger or smaller. There's other types of even graphs, but the thing you need to recognize is that even graphs have a starting point. Odd graphs look like this little S shape. So they have a middle point, but then it goes either down, left, up, right, however it works out. So even and odd graphs, remember what they look like because that's going to help you when you're graphing. Now when graphing radical equations, the first thing you're going to want to look at is the index. Check the index, see what the index is, if it's even or odd. Our mission is going to make sure we pick appropriate points and plot them on the graph. Remember, we cannot take an even root of a negative number. And then our game plan is going to be these sort of 3 steps. So first we have to find an x value that makes the radicand equal 0. That's either your middle point or your starting point. If it's odd, you're going to want to pick a point on each side of that. If it's even, you're going to want to only pick values that are going to make your radical positive, and then you're going to plot those points. So let's go through this. For this first one, what we're going to do is we're going to pick the first x value to see how this graph is going to work out. So we notice it's a square root. Square roots are even, and even graphs have a starting point and then sort of go up or down, left or right. So if it's even, we need to pick an x value that makes this equal 0 first. So the only thing that's going to make this equal 0 is 0. And we always put this starting point at the top. That goes on the top row because that's our starting point. And then I'm going to try and pick numbers that are perfect square roots. So I'm going to plug 1 and 4. And then I just plug them in. So square root of 0 is 0, so my y value is 0. For 1, square root of 1 is 1, so my y value is 1. For 4, square root of 4 is 2, so my y value is 2. So I have these points that I'm going to plot on my graph. So we go ahead and plot the points. We have one at 0, 0, 1, 1, at 4, 2. And since it was even, we know it's going to follow a curve, and that this right here, this is going to be our endpoint because it's an even function, so it has an endpoint. Now let's try an odd function. So if we look here, our index is 3, so we know it's odd. Odd have an S shape. One way to kind of think about it is odds go in opposite directions, odd, opposite. And then again, we want to figure out what's going to make this equal 0. So for odds, we set this equal to 0. And this point, that's the middle point of our S. So that goes in the middle of our XY chart. And then we're going to try and pick x values smaller and bigger than 0. I'm going to try and pick ones that are perfect cube roots so that I don't have to deal with all that mess. So I'm going to do -1 and +1. So if I plug in the cube root of -1, cube root of -1 is -1, so the y value there is -1. If I plug in the cube root of 0, that's simply 0. So my y value is 0, and then the cube root of +1 is 1. So I'm going to plot these 3 points on my graph. I go -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and then I'm going to sketch in that S curve, remembering that this point right here, this is my middle of my S curve. Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. If you want to get better at math, subscribe to my videos here. If you want more information on math, click on my website link here.